Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. Feeling a bit burnt out with Classic at all? Recently I've seen a bit of a pickup in the number of people wanting to take a break or not finding a whole lot to do. Do you feel like you're running out of things to work towards on your character? Or even characters, perhaps? I'm pretty sure that I've mentioned this before, but in Classic more so than any other iteration of World of Warcraft, you kind of need to make your own content and set your own personal goals to reach, because let's be real, there's only so many ZGs you can run on so many characters a week, and there are only so many pre-made battlegrounds you can roll over your opposition with before it starts wearing a little bit thin. Well, at least it does for most players. I used to go through cycles of playing loads on retail and then getting burned out and stopping for literally years, to the point where I know what kind of stuff starts off the cycle and I cut it out there. One of the main offenders is always thinking the grass is greener on the other side. Re-rolling. Trying not only to level but gearing so many alts where at the start gearing is super fast and it feels like you're getting loads done, but then you sort of hit that point where you are on your main where you only really have a few upgrades left and you run dungeons or raids again and again and again, but that Savage Gladiator's Chain or Chromatically Tempered Sword just never drop and you end up getting demotivated to continue, especially when you realize that once you do finish those final items off, you're just going to have another completed character, so to speak, and then you start it all over again. And that's even if you make it that far. Many people are still stuck in leveling over and over. Well, at least if you are at that point, you do have endgame to look forwards to. Then again, I know some people that do exactly this and they're still going along fine, so it's what some people enjoy, and that's good for them, but for many it can surely wear your enjoyment of the game down over time, and as a rule I don't play more than 2 characters actively at once. Any more than that and it gets a bit much to keep up with for me. Speaking about re-rolling, we have that little hurdle known as leveling. It takes a long time, a very long time, and that's even if you know what you're doing in terms of rooting out zones, and many people just don't like doing it either, which is kind of a shame as it's such a huge part of the game. I guess once you've seen it through a few times, that's more than enough for many, so people turn to paying for boosts through the whole process so they can just sort of skip straight to the action at the end, which personally, starting off a fresh 60 trying to get into dungeons now as a player without a group or a guild or who can't tank sounds like it would be a real struggle. Anyways, I think the trend of boosting straight to the end is turning into a pretty negative thing overall. It's making a lot of people skip time where they could have learned their class through a bit better overall, and taking time to do those levels, learning all of their abilities at their class trainer, finding out what works for them, and actually getting your class quest. I mean, when you hear about warriors at 60 without berserker stance, paladins that don't have resurrect, or shamans without totems, it's crazy that people basically don't want to actually play the game or think about the game starting until level cap. And I know PvE rotations are quite literally one button for most classes, but people use that as an excuse to undermine detail that goes into making you actually good at your class. Take a mage, for example, that's been boosted nearly all the way. I know, the booster becomes the boosty. It happens. Anyway, your PvE rotation is just Frostbolt or Fireball, right? Class is easy. You barely need to know anything. But then you wouldn't be able to answer what rank of Frost Nova should you be using if you had a Mana Shield, Fireward and an Ice Barrier up. Which takes damage first and why? In what scenario should you use Amplify or Dampen Magic? When is Detect Magic actually useful? And so on. I think you can see what I mean here. It would be the same as a fresh 60 warrior. Warriors rely so heavily on macroing well to save bar space and just make the class more easy to play. You'd be missing out on all of that if you were just a fresh 60 having been boosted the whole way. Honestly, I think that getting a boost all the way to 60 is kind of like paying for a boost in retail, to be completely honest. It's not quite as on the same level, but you're going straight to the end game, skipping everything in between and getting straight into gearing with a pretty basic or near non-existent understanding of what your class actually does. It's different, of course, if you played your class for years and years on private servers. I can get why you would just want to be level 60 and get straight into the action, but for returning or newer players trying to level alts, going through content and just seeing dungeon boost spam in LFG and World all day every day and finally thinking, you know, fine, I can't seem to get a group going, I'm just going to grind gold on my main and pay my alt through leveling, and that I'll be able to play the game at 60 properly. And when they are 60, they realize they don't know what's going on, only to try and perk, cause problems, not have learned important spells and so on. I just think overall it's not a good look for the game. Maybe this is just me. I don't really mind leveling at all. In fact, I couldn't imagine sitting there waiting for dungeon reset after dungeon reset. I always feel like I need to be doing something if I'm actually logged into the game. I mean, it's weird, you play a game for fun, but then you're paying somebody else to skip a huge portion of the game for you. That's why it's kind of like a retail boost, it just takes longer overall. I do see now how people get into leveling speedruns. It's kind of fun to have completed a whole zone in a super efficient manner. And this is coming from someone who did a few hours of the 7-man Scarlet Monastery Cathedral and a few hours of the Lyceum in the first week before sort of getting bored of the whole thing, and somebody who is now working on their 6th level 60 just done through questing. Thinking about it, it's even crazier how many people opted into spell cleaves early on to level. In fact, it feels like they're totally gone now, and it's just boost or level normally. For me, I have quite a few goals that I'm looking to reach. One of the biggest ones has to be to level every single class to level cap. I know since I started back in late vanilla, I've always been the most interested in checking out what each class can do and get an understanding myself of what makes them good personally. And in every expansion to come, I pretty much always leveled each and every class all the way to level cap as just sort of something I do throughout the duration of an expansion. Of course, lately in Legion, and especially in BFA, it's so incredibly fast to level now that when I was leveling, I was doing a 110 to 120 run in a couple of hours with all the XP buffs running. For Classic though, well, it's going to take me a little bit longer, especially when I'm just leveling through questing and doing the occasional dungeon. And I'll admit I'm partially doing this in the hopes of TBC being a thing, and that I can do the same all the way to 70 once those servers come around. I severely doubt we're going to get any form of character progression reset come the start of TBC. I know personally that I would like to a certain extent some of what I put my time into doing in Classic to still be there in TBC. On top of this, I've always been somebody that purposefully made a point to reroll more or less every single expansion in World of Warcraft on retail because I thought, well, I've played this class for a while now, let's change it up, which means that I've ended up with such a wide spread of various characters that have completed an expansion, so to speak. This is one of the things that makes the whole collection meta daunting for me, and I know that so much of it is consolidated now, but I just like everything to be in one place, if you know what I mean. So in Classic, this is my time to actually fulfill that goal and play the game in a bit more of a completionist way. This is made more difficult by lack of bag space, but just as some examples of why I always have something to do, I would like to get the following done. I want to get as many reputations as possible to 999 out of 1000 exalted. I want to have all classes at 60. I want to see if I can solo all dungeons on my warlock. I want to complete all raid content and have all tier sets. I'd like to do 1000 Diamond Lease runs, have about 10k raw gold, earn an epic mount on every class, look at getting all the companion pets. I would do mounts as well, but bag space is the thing. And yeah, there's no rank goal for me or PvP goal. I like to be able to do things at my own pace, not be forced into one grind for a long time. Maybe there's other things as well that I'll discover as I go through the game. Let me know if that sounds interesting to follow along at all, because as I say, I would like to work what I'm doing in-game into my content too at some point, as perhaps a different style from my usual stuff. So that's why whenever I log in, I have something to do beyond the big three of raid, PvP or farm gold. And yeah, that's a lot to do, but it shows how Classic is more about what you set as a goal rather than what the game has to offer as goals. This is the big difference from retail when you log on. There's no dailies, there's no running old raids for mount or transmog, there's no weekly objectives, mythic plus or anything else. There's so much repeatable content that's been added to the game. Some of it's good, some of it's bad in my opinion. Min-max attitudes not just in PvE or PvP, but from an overall overarching standpoint are a good way to get to the end of your journey on a character in potentially a matter of weeks and then find yourself with just another decked out raid logger. Classic certainly has a smaller cutoff point in terms of where content really comes to an end point. Well, unless you want to rank, that is, but I can understand that aside from not being for everyone, even fewer people actually have the time to invest into getting a high rank. All of this being said, content in Classic is coming out at a pretty fast pace still. I'm expecting Phase 5 to be quite soon, which considering we're about 10 months from release, well, it's a fair bit faster than it ever was in vanilla, as I just happened to have detailed in my previous video. So even if you are taking a break at the moment, it always feels like the next big content phase isn't too far away. And AQ40, also the other raids, does have a fair bit more preparation to be done in terms of consumables and resist gear. Well, that's at least how it's being presented at the moment. We'll have to see how it actually plays out soon enough, I guess. Aside from all this though, and everything I've gone over so far, I think Classic has retained more players than Blizzard expected, than I expected, and even the player base itself expected. The game has done well, really well overall, which is a great sign for the future to come of legacy content, and I still think it has a good amount of time left in it as well. And all of this isn't even considering those guys stuck with 2 level 37s, a level 26 and a main who's a level 49 at this point. If I could give you one bit of advice, pick a main, stick with it, get it to 60. If you do like leveling alts as much as I do, I can tell you that it's a whole lot more fun when you can actually get them some decent gear bags and a mount at level 40, instead of running about with a level 20 quest reward at level 40 or something. In fact, this may be one of the more fun things about actually gearing an alt, seeing their gear progress as they gain levels, which, unlike gearing at endgame, doesn't rely upon you having to find a tank, which can be a real nightmare at times. Anyhow, how are you all doing in Classic so far? Keeping busy? Running low on things to do? Do you have any projects at all to complete throughout the duration of Classic? I know tier 0.5 would be a cool one potentially to add to my list as well, so you can let me know what you're working on below, and I will see you very soon. If you like what you see, give the video a like and subscribe, as there'll be plenty more to come. Take care guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.